Welcome to Career and Leadership Real Talk, the no-nonsense guide for ambitious managers who want to have more impact and progress their career. I'm Pamela Langan, a job search coach and expert CV writer specialising in helping frustrated professionals land the jobs and pay rises they know they deserve.
And I'm Jacqui Jagger, a leadership and mindset coach specialising in helping newly promoted and new to role leaders to avoid the dickhead trap and lead with confidence. Between us, we've helped hundreds of leaders and managers to find new roles, take ownership of their careers, and handle the challenges that job searches and leadership responsibility inevitably bring. And now we're joining forces to share with you what we know has worked for our clients. Hello and welcome to this week's episode. Today we are talking about email overload, which I have to say, the number of times I've had this conversation with clients and leaders in businesses where we've been doing leadership development work. I just feel like email has become this massive deal and pretty much everybody feels like they have way too many emails in their life. So we wanted to share some of our top tips on 3 areas really. So one is personal organization and how you can start to feel more in control of managing your email workload. One is email culture and thinking about how you can create some expectations with your team, if that's appropriate for you. And then finally, also looking at how you can make sure that you write emails in a way that will get you the response that you want. So Pam, personal organization and emails then, this is one of the hardest things to have good discipline about, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things now that it's expected that somebody sends you an email and you're expected to answer that email straight away. And it can be so distracting, can't it? And it's just, how do you move away from that? So one of the things that I've used, and I know one of the things that we generally recommend is to batch process your emails. So start looking at your emails 2 to 3 times a day, and you can almost get people into a routine that they know when you're looking at your emails. So they know that you might do emails like 9 to 9:30, just after lunch, just before the end of the day. So they're not looking over the top of their computer screens waiting for you to jump on that email and answer. They know that you'll look at those emails as the day progresses and thinking about how then you can highlight urgent things that need to be dealt with. You can start thinking about how do you start training people around showing them how to communicate with you via email in a way that means that you can keep on top of the emails and they also know how to get the best from you as well.
And I think with this, the discipline of stopping yourself from checking your emails is the hardest bit, because there's this worry that if I don't reply to emails, they'll build up. There's this concern about what if I miss something that's important because I'm only checking them a couple of times a day. But that's often a smokescreen. And in reality, it's because so many of us are, I know that's what I was like when I was employed. You do your emails in 5 minutes between here and there, and then you bash through as many as you can, or you come out of a meeting, you've got 20 minutes. So you just go through, but then you sit and you're trying to do some other piece of work that might need a bit more thought, a bit more consideration. And you're just attuned to this idea of got to get them off my plate. I heard a brilliant analogy the other day, which is you wouldn't do your laundry by hand washing one item at once or going to the tumble dryer 14 times in a day and taking 2 things out at once. It would be a nuts way to handle your washing and drying. But we take that same mindset for some reason and apply it to emails. And it's incredibly inefficient and people just end up rushing to get through. So just that one simple thing of batching those emails 2 or 3 times a day can be transformational if you can have some of the discipline to stick to it.
Yeah, and I think take off those notifications as well. The worst thing is when you sat there and it's like ping and you're distracted and you're looking across and whatever you were focusing on, you lose that focus and then you see something and you think, do I need to respond to that? And then you go off down a little rabbit hole and you think, wow, I've just wasted like 10, 15 minutes, maybe more. Get rid of those notifications. And I would even say close down your email box when you're focusing on other things so that you can't hear that ping, you can't see the emails. Sometimes the number of those emails like building up, you start almost getting a little bit of anxiety around it and a little bit stressed. And you're thinking, oh, they're building up. How am I going to deal with these? And a lot of the time, it does come down to workload, doesn't it? And how overworked we can be sometimes. So those additional emails and not getting to them straight away can feel it can feel really bad, can't it? It can feel like really stressful. And it is just about thinking, how do I start coming away from that? What do I put in place? And like you say, being really disciplined with yourself, because it's that self-discipline that is going to help keep on top of it. And then also things like implementing a triage system. So you can set up some folders. So you could have urgent this week, or, even an FYI folder, which is like, somebody's FYI'd me in. It's probably not super urgent, but I'll come back and read it later when I've got some time. So there's things like that you can do as well to make that a little bit easier. Obviously, one person's urgent is going to be different to another person's urgent. So that's just something else that you would need to think about. But just starting to put those things in place can really start to help.
I've found that for my own, that just having quite a simple folder structure that I can just move things to move them out of the inbox just makes it so much easier. So I think it doesn't have to be those exact labels that we've suggested. It depends on what your role is, what types of emails you get, whether it's better to sort them according to urgency, or whether you might need some that require further thought, some that you can deal with immediately and you just deal with them and then you delete them. I literally probably nightmare, because I keep pretty much every email, but I just use the search function if I need to find stuff. And I find that works really well for me. So I keep the file structure quite simple to move things into, but then I've still got emails that I can search and go back to. So I never feel like, oh, I've deleted stuff that I needed to keep. But if it is stuff that just genuinely, that's it, it's dealt with, the delete button is a thing of beauty.
Yes, that, and you know what, that is so true. And we all could do more of that, couldn't we? And also thinking about getting involved in emails that you don't really need to have any involvement in. So what do we say? Practice strategic non-involvement.
This is a really big one, because again, if you are sat with your emails open and things are coming through, you will have email threads where you don't need to get involved, but because it's there and you're bashing through your emails, you feel the need, you feel driven and pulled to get involved. And I remember a conversation a couple of years ago, senior leader, been promoted to their first C-suite role, and their email box was a nightmare. And one of the things that we were talking about was how one email would be of strategic priority, big business decision, and the next thing would be this tiny little purchase order that they just automatically get copied into. And so for things like that, you can have rules where those things that it's important that you are copied into, or the system is set up so that you get copied into stuff, but is just noise, that doesn't have to be visible. You can set up automations and rules so that those things get moved. And I think particularly in that kind of instance as well, you've got to be aware of how much time and attention are these things worthy of, and do I actually need to reply or be a part of this or not? So yeah, unsubscribe from things that are maybe lists that you don't need to be subscribed to. Let people know that you don't need copying into everything, and don't get involved in conversations just for the sake of that you have been included, when actually all that's going to do is prompt more replies, because reply to all was the bane of my life when I was employed.
Yeah, I think as well with reply to all, people do tend to like to do that just to be seen and be heard sometimes as well. So it can waste a lot of time when somebody hits that reply to all, or my pet hate is reply to all to say thank you or to point out that this email is not for me. It's like, does everyone need to know that? Does everybody need to see that? And I think it's about using your discretion as well, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think when you start to do that again and you pull back from getting involved in conversations that you perhaps previously might have just automatically out of habit responded to, then things can just go on in the background and you don't pull yourself into it. It can make a really big difference because then you've got more headspace to focus on the things that do need your attention. And if you're batching it and you're doing it in chunks rather than just randomly throughout the day, and your team are aware of that this is how you are organizing yourself, then you can set that expectation with other people that if something really is urgent, then these are the ways that you can get in touch with me, whether that's send me a Teams message, whether that is call me, we'll book a meeting, whatever, but you don't have to get involved in absolutely everything. And I think more people could take more care to not get involved in emails, and that would reduce everybody's email overload.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, isn't it, as well? Because I think part of your development as a leader as well is almost taking that step back, isn't it? And thinking from that more strategic perspective and being like, okay, somebody from my team has got this in hand. And it's so tempting sometimes when you know the answers, or you could just give them a quick email back and maybe you could solve part of whatever's going on. But actually, part of developing yourself as a leader is going, right, okay, my team have got this in hand, or there's a person who's got this in hand. So I'm going to take a step back and I'm going to be aware of it. I'm just going to file it away. And if they do need additional support or answers, then they can come to me specifically, because I think it's so easy, isn't it, to get drawn in to stuff that your team are working on because the answer, well, you've done something like that before. And then what you're effectively doing is taking that learning away from the team, isn't it? And I always think sometimes you look at stuff and you think, oh, it'd be so easy for me to just type a quick response. But then how many of them then add up and build up throughout the day and the weeks and the months, whereas you can let your team crack on, have the learnings, make the mistakes, do all the good stuff, and you can just observe it.
And sometimes I think that's a brilliant example of ones that people often can not respond to, that they feel pulled to, because you're absolutely right. If you sit there with that knowledge in your head and someone's asked a question in an email, there's a strong drive to reply and be the person to give the answer. But it doesn't always mean that that question was directed at you. And that's quite time consuming. Replying and writing a reply can maybe take 5-10 minutes. And like you say, the number of emails that senior people are sent, if you're doing that every single time, then that isn't the most efficient. And sometimes it might be that you just give somebody a verbal answer, or it might be that they find the answer out or someone else responds. But you're absolutely right. That is a real pull when there's a question. So thinking more broadly then about the kind of email culture that you can hopefully try and shape and influence when you are in a more senior role. So what are some of the aspects around that people could consider and think about?
So I think the key thing is going to be about setting those clear expectations and making sure that you've got a plan, everybody knows what that is, and that you're sticking to it, and you're encouraging people to implement their own similar plan as well. So that could be that you all know what deadlines you're working towards. You might have a different view of that rather than it all just pinging around on emails. You might use like the one big thing rule for complex topics, or you might establish some consistent labels. For example, urgent must be urgent. Like it can't just be urgent because you want that email to be read. It's almost life and death on that day, or life or death on that day. You can start thinking about how that is implemented within your team. You've got to be really consistent with it. You can't do it for 2 or 3 days and then something happens and it all goes out the window and then you're like, let's get back to it. Like people need that level of consistency because they need to know when you're going to respond, how you're going to respond, and also they need to keep that consistency too.
And I think it's worth explaining the one big thing, because that's something that I certainly didn't know about, but I feel like I've instinctively lent towards it when I was employed. So the idea behind this is that if you've got a complex topic where there are several smaller elements, then instead of having one email thread that tries to address several different topics, each email thread relates to one thing. So you don't have something that is, for example, about the complex workings of a project that draws together 3 or 4 different things. You would have more emails, but each email would only address one particular topic. And I know that I spent a lot of time both writing and reading and trying to get my head around emails where that wasn't the case. And that would have been a really helpful thing to have implemented within my team or within a wider organization in the roles where I had the ability to influence that. So if you are managing a team, then you can set that expectation for you and your team, even if it's not a broader organizational expectation. And because a lot of your email communication typically will be within your own team, just implementing those types of rules within your own team and having that consistency with your team can make quite a big difference to being able to get to the right things in the right priority order.
Yeah, and I think once you've established that and you're consistent with it, it can work really well and it can take the pressure off, and it can also reduce the amount of emails that are kinds of bashing about around, because that I do think like when we speak to professionals, like the main thing that is stressing them out in their day-to-day jobs is their emails, isn't it? It's like, what's the main thing that is stressing you out and stopping you from moving forwards and progressing in your career? And it's like workloads. And when you break that down, it's what is the top thing that comes up under workload? It's emails. I get too many emails. I literally blink and there's another 100 emails in my inbox. So just putting some small things in place can really make a huge difference. And then I think as well, like how you write emails yourself is really important, isn't it? Because how you construct those emails is going to determine the length of response, the type of response. Is that email going to be answered or ignored? It is how you write things is going to either make your life really simple or it's going to complicate it. So I think in terms of writing the emails, what would you say you need to really think about when you're writing those emails? Because it is hard when you're busy to create that great response as well, isn't it?
It is. And I think there is, again, a lot of really simple things that are just really good practice here. So some of the things that we've talked about before are the principles of responding rather than reacting. So if you get an email where you read it and you think the tone isn't right or you're not happy about something, if you just bash out a reply when your emotions are heightened, then that may well allow you to vent, but not necessarily get the result that you need. So I always talk about think, feel, do, which is start with what do you want that person to do or to think or to feel as a result of reading your email, and then construct your email with that aim in mind. Beyond that, I think there's the one that you've talked about previously of read your emails aloud before you click send, so that you get a sense of what did you intend, but actually how does that sound when you read it aloud? Because email communications, especially if you're jamming them into chunks of time in between other bits of the day, can come across as brusque or use language that is more formal than you might use as opposed to conversational. But also, I think there's a couple of really key ones around writing. I was known when I was employed for saying to people, bullet points, just give me bullet points. A lot of times where people write an email, they will write an email that is quite long. They will have a stream of consciousness. The main point of the email is at the bottom. So people have to have read through all this other stuff and try and get their head around it. And that is not suited to an audience of people who are busy and are rushing to get through their emails. So think about how you structure your emails. Use headers so that people can skim sections. Use bullet points so that you use short points rather than long paragraphs. And use something called the bluff method, which stands for bottom line upfront. And what you'll find is if you look back over particularly longer emails that you've written, often the main point, the main emphasis is it's a story with that point at the end. And so that flips it and says, tell your audience, tell that person that's reading that email, smack them between the eyes at the top, up front with, this is the point of the email, this is what you need to know, and then give any supplementary information or backup or reasoning or argument. Any of that kind of stuff can then flow on. And what that does is just has the audience in mind so that people can act on it, can take decisions more quickly and easily. And again, if you start to instigate that, and that becomes more of a kind of a team expectation and something that is more consistent and more common, that makes life easier for everybody.
Yeah. And I think as well, as a senior leader, a lot of the time when people are emailing you stuff and it is a little bit war and peace, then it's because they're also trying to impress. They're trying to show you how good they are at their jobs and things like that. So implementing a method like that where you're doing it and they're doing it, so it's these are the key points, I'm going to give it to you up front, and then I'm going to give you the detail, and if you've got time to read it now, great, and if you haven't, you can file it and come back later straight away what I need from you, whether that's information, whatever it is. You can see that straight away. You can see the purpose and you know what you need to do with it. And it does make things a lot easier. And again, from a development point of view, that's a great thing, isn't it? To implement and teach people how to do that, because that's one of those, it's almost like a life skill, isn't it? That it's one of those unwritten type of rule things where it's, do you know what? This kind of communication is going to make you stand out, as opposed to this kind of communication, which is really detailed, really heavy, really hard to read. But actually, if we just spin it on its head, we do it this way, this is great for your development, this helps me, this helps you. It just makes things easier. And at the same time, you are then developing those people and those team members, and they're going to go on to do that as well.
And a really simple hack, depending upon your organization's policy, because I know some don't allow AI tools, but there's so many great AI tools. And if you've written a communication, you can ask ChatGPT, Claude, one of those, summarize this for me using the bottom line upfront method. And what you'll find is that you don't necessarily even have to do the work. You can do exactly what you would do, just stream of consciousness, bang it out, and then ask the AI tool to do that summary for you so that you can then send that email. So you can ask it to make this 50% shorter. You can ask it to summarize this in 3 sentences or less. There's lots of different versions of prompts that you can use where you can aim to make your email communication more succinct, use that bottom line upfront method without you necessarily having to go through lots of hard work to do it. And what you'll find is when you read it back, they tend to do a pretty good job in response to those type of prompts.
Yeah, and that's a great idea, actually, isn't it? I wish there was stuff like around back in my corporate days, because that would have just made my life so much easier. But I think just taking on a few of these things is going to make your email life so much easier. It's going to support your team. It's going to help with your development, their development. There's so much to it. It's more than just how to manage your emails, isn't it?
Yeah. And you can use those prompts as well with emails you've received, where if you have been sent War and Peace, you can cut and paste that and say, what decisions do I need to make, or summarize this for me in 3 sentences. So you can use those prompts to make it easier when you've received emails that aren't written with those intent in mind as well.
Brilliant. So hopefully you've enjoyed this episode and you're now going to be totally on top of your email inbox. And please, as usual, share with anyone that might also find it useful. And don't forget to rate and review us, because the more reviews we get, the more people will get to hear our lovely voices. And also, if you do require any support for team development or personal development, then get in touch and we will be able to share with you all of the options and all of the things that we can support you with. So we'll be back next week with another episode.
Exciting news from us. If you're an ambitious leader or manager earning 50k or more and you're ready to take your career to the next level, we have an opportunity for you. Introducing Catalyst Career Club, your secret weapon for unlocking career success. As a member, you'll get access to monthly live training sessions, exclusive job opportunities, and the ability to get personalised advice from us on your toughest career challenges.
We've helped thousands of driven leaders like you secure significant pay rises, land dream roles, and thrive in their careers. And now we want to support you in achieving your most ambitious career goals too. Membership is just $6.99 per month with no contract or tie-in. And as a special bonus for being our podcast listeners, you can use the code podcast at checkout to get your first month for just £1. Head over to pamelalangan.com/Catalyst Career Club to sign up now, and we'll see you inside.